Hey everybody, it's me, Steve SCHNEE, the CD Junkie. On this episode of 10 Great Albums of the 80s, I'm going to talk about 10 great albums of the 80s. Now remember, like I say in other episodes, this isn't the 10 greatest albums of the 80s, this is just 10 great albums of the 80s. So much great music came out during that decade that I'm still discovering stuff, many, many years later, maybe things that that doesn't look that interesting, or maybe I didn't like it the first time or whatever, but this is all stuff that I loved. And forget my nickname, the CD Junkie, because this is stuff that I was buying on vinyl back then. So everything that I'm talking about, if you are not a CD person, you can still find this out there in the wild on vinyl, and it's all worth your while. The 80s was really when I came into my own in terms of my own musical tastes. I grew up listening to AM radio and the stuff that my family played. It was all wonderful. I still listen to that stuff to this very day. But I started discovering artists on my own in about 78, and from then on it's just been a wonderful journey of musical discovery. So after that introduction, let's talk about 10 great albums of the 80s. I'm going to start with Upstairs at Eric's from Yazoo. This is a band formed by Vince Clarke, who was in Depeche Mode for their first album, Speak and Spell, but he had left the band, and then he formed Yazoo with a vocalist by the name of Alison Moyet. And this album came out in 1982, and it is absolutely splendid and wonderful. Prime example of synth pop. The first single off this album, I believe, was Only You, and it was backed by a song called Situation. I mean, I really liked Only You, the A-side, but Situation was really the thing that made me think, wow, this is a great band. Just very upbeat, kind of joyful in a way, and soulful as well, because Alison Moyet, incredible voice. But this came out as Yazoo in the UK. There was a label in America called Yazoo, and they couldn't legally release their album under that name. So they released it here in America under the name Yaz. So it's the same album, apart from one difference. In the Yazoo album, they have a song on side 2 called Tuesday. And that is there. That is not available on the American version, because what they did is they took the song off and they replaced it with Situation, which was the B-side of Only You. And it just makes the album. I really enjoy the song Tuesday, but it really makes the album for me. And I just can't get enough of this album. It's just upbeat, joyful. You definitely need to check it out. Now, if you have not heard of or have not heard Yazoo, this is really, they only put out 2 albums, and this is the best of the best. So you can buy it under the name Yazoo, or you can buy it under Yaz. Like I said, that's the version I prefer because it has Situation on it. But either way, definitely check out this band. Yazoo, Upstairs at Eric's, came out in 1982.
All I needed was the love you gave. All I needed for another day. And all I ever knew, only you. Can't stop now, don't you know? I never gonna let you go, don't go. I wish they'd fix the wires, 'cause my baby don't know that I'm leaving in the morning and I'm ready to go. Can you hear me? Can you hear me at all? Gotta get the operator, make a telephone call. Move out, don't mess around. Move out, you bring me down. Move out, how you get about? Don't make a sound. Just move out. Move out, don't mess around. Move out, you bring me down. Move out, how you get about? Don't make a sound. Just move out.
Next album on my list is a wonderful guitar pop album that came out in 1984 by LLOYD Cole and the Commotions. This is the deluxe edition. I'll take this cover off there so you can see that. That's what the album cover looks like. Really fantastic, jangly guitar. It's more, television inspired, as in the group. And, it's got a folky edge, American edge, but it's still very British. LLOYD Cole, a very intelligent singer-songwriter. This is the debut album. LLOYD Cole is still around today creating wonderful music. And he's still working with Blair Cowan, the keyboard player from Lloyd Cole and the Commotions. But this is really wonderful. You know, it came out about the same time as, the Smiths were around, and there's all these other guitar bands that were just really amazing. But Lloyd Cole, it could be moody and brooding, but in a sense, it could also be joyful, smart, intelligent, really absolutely wonderful. This is Lloyd Cole and the Commotions' Rattlesnakes from 1984.
When she smiles my way, my eyes go out in vain. She's got perfect skin. She looks like human soul in on the waterfront. She reads Simone de Beauvoir in her American circumstance. Must you tell me all your secrets when it's hard enough to love you knowing nothing? We're living 4 flights up, but I swear right now it feels like underground. Are you ready to be heartbroken? Are you ready to be heartbroken? Are you ready to bleed?
Now let's head back to the land of synth pop with Men Without Hats, Rhythm of Youth, a wonderful album. Came out in 1982. Of course, this is the album with Safety Dance. A lot of people say, oh, they're a one-hit wonder. No, because they actually had another hit with Pop Goes the World, and they also had some, minor hits, and especially got a lot of airplay on radio stations like KROQ in the 80s. Really a fantastic band. They had a great sense of humor, but they were also very intelligent, and they wrote great poppy songs, and they sounded like nobody else. This is a wonderful album. Now, this is a CD version that has bonus tracks, but one of my favorite songs by Men Without Hats, in fact, it is my favorite song by Men Without Hats, is on this album. It is called I Got the Message. There's other great songs like I Like, Ideas for Walls and stuff, but it's very, very... I cannot believe that people just go, oh, just blow them off, because they are really worth your while. They're still around, actually. Ivan Doroschuk is still touring as Men Without Hats, and they are still releasing new music. I love them to death. So this is Men Without Hats, Rhythm of Youth, came out in 1982.
I got the message.
They don't dance, well they're no friends of mine. See, we can go where we want to, places they will never find. And we can act like we come from out of this world, leave the real one far behind. We can dance.
Now everybody knows I'm a fan of power pop, Django pop, guitar pop, as well as synth pop and post-punk and all that kind of stuff. So let's stick to 1982 and talk about another artist that came out that year. It'll show you how varied the 80s were, and that's Marshall Crenshaw. This is very Beatles, Buddy Holly, Everly Brothers influenced. It's really absolutely wonderful, incredible collection of great pop songs. He actually played John Lennon in a touring version of Beatlemania, not the one that became popular, with Mitch Wiseman and all those folks. But Marshall Crenshaw was in a different version. He played John Lennon. That kind of pop is very, very, very dominant in his sound. He had a great band, his brother Robert Crenshaw on drums and Chris Donato on bass, and those three together just created this wonderful, joyful pop sound with just great hooks and harmonies. And this is the album that contains the big hit Someday, Someway. The album was actually reissued, I think, a year or two ago, or maybe 3 years ago, by Yep Rock. And they changed the album cover and they added bonus tracks as well. This version here is a Rhino version that contains bonus tracks. So whatever you find, I definitely recommend you to get the Yep Rock version because it has more tracks. But either way, it's an absolutely wonderful, stellar album. Marshall Crenshaw, self-titled, came out in 1982.
Someday, somewhere, someday.
Now, is this next band, is this during their synth pop period? I still don't consider Devo's Freedom of Choice synth pop. I consider it electronic pop or electronic post-punk. It's not as edgy as the first two albums, but it's just a delicious platter filled with great songs. This is the album that has Whip It, Girl You Want, Snowball, Gates of Steel, and of course the title track. Really absolutely wonderful. This is them at the top of their game. You know, they had come from that really quirky sound of their first album, Are We Not Men, and then smoothed out the edges by the time of their second album, Duty Now for the Future. By the time this came out in 1980, it was fun, but it was smart, it was clever, lots of different things happening. They didn't just stick to electronics, keyboards and stuff. There's plenty of guitar and just a bunch of great songs. This is a reissue CD that has some bonus tracks on it or whatever, but this is a defining moment, I think, in 80s new wave. This is really when, synth pop, experimental, not quite experimental, but clever, eclectic, eccentric synth pop moved over into the mainstream and really took the nation by storm, took the world by storm. Devo, Freedom of Choice, came out in 1980.
Correct and will. Give the pass a slip. Step on the way. Break your mama's back. When a problem comes along, twist away the gates of steel. Unlock the secret voice. Give in to ancient noise. She sings on somewhere you can't see. She sits in the top of the greenest tree. She sends out an aroma of undefined love. It drips on down in a mist from above. She's just a girl. She's just a girl. The girl you want. My baby took our love and then she rolled it up a hill like a ball of snow, like a snowball goes until it gets too big, until she lost control and it rolled back down, and it rolled back down.
Now, here is a really weird one because a lot of people don't consider them new wave and stuff. That's really what I sort of focus on, new wave, synth pop, power pop, all that kind of stuff. But they were embraced back then by radio stations that played that stuff. And I'm talking about Juluka, a band from South Africa led by singer-songwriter Johnny Clegg. And this was absolutely wonderful. This was actually out before, Paul Simon did his Graceland album. It was basically Zulu rock or Zulu pop. They combined rock music with, South African Zulu music and created something entirely, absolutely unique. Producer Hilton Rosenthal was able to really, really make it sound commercial, and I really thought that they were going to have some kind of success. Some people considered it world music, but like I said, radio stations like KROQ played it a lot, and you weren't hearing it on top 40 stations or any other stations for that matter. So their records were selling to kind of like the new wave kids. And then there were other bands like Jimmy the Hoover and these other bands that came along later that adapted that South African rhythm. But Juluka was their first, really wonderful. So anyway, this is an album that came out in 1982, and it is called Scatterlings.
And from the scatterings of Africa, the journey has begun. Oh, mama, future find their hungry eyes beneath the copper sun. the ravens and the crows already soak up the sky.
Another album from 1982. I guess that's shaping out to be my favorite year of the 80s. But a lot of people didn't realize this album was a compilation, and it is Built for Speed by the Stray Cats. This is actually a compilation featuring the best of their first two UK albums. I mean, how strange is it? A band from America, Brian Setzer, Slim Jim Phantom, and Lee Rocker, they head over to the UK, they make their mark in the UK. This first album and Gonna Ball, the second album, actually ended up being just hot sellers, as imports in the U.S. So they took songs off of those albums, they added a few others, and created the album Built for Speed. This, of course, has Rock This Town, Runaway Boys, Stray Cat Strut, great collection of songs. This great 1982 album kind of kickstarted the rockabilly scene here in the U.S., on a commercial level, because the scene had already been growing here in America, but it really pushed it into the charts, or at least made more people aware of it. So Built for Speed by the Stray Cats came out in 1982.
We're gonna rock this town, rock it inside out. We're gonna rock this town, make them scream and shout. Let's rock, rock, rock and rock. We're gonna rock till we pop, we're gonna rock till we drop. We're gonna rock this town, rock it inside out. Singing the blues while the lady cats cry. Wow, stray cat, you're a real darn guy. I wish I could be as carefree and wild, but I got cat class and I got cat style. DA agent with the fuel injection. 283, that's my ounce of prevention. It's that rod and when it's very late, haven't gotten around to getting license plates. Who can I turn to? Where can I stay? I heard a place is open all night and all day. There's a place you can go where the cops don't know you can act real wild. They don't treat you like a child. Runaway boy.
Now here's one that is kooky and goofy and odd and eccentric and very commercial, at least for 1983. It's a group called Haysi Fantayzee and an album called Battle Hymns for Children Singing. And this is an album that is hard to describe. It's taking pop elements, but adding, early, almost rapping, but not quite rapping. And it just sounds like music created by people who were tripping. And it's poppy. And the song Shiny Shiny is the big song from this album. I mean, that song there is so catchy that if you just mention it to somebody, they'll punch you in the face because that song is going to be stuck in their head for the rest of the day. But they're an odd band. In fact, this is the only band, swear to God, that, look at the name of the band there, Haysi Fantayzee, right? Never. I mean, this has been 41 years since this album came out, and I still can't spell the name of the band. I don't know what it is. I can never remember. Well, is it a Z here, an S there? I have no idea what it is. And I've tried to remember, but I always get it wrong. So I always have to check the internet or check the album cover. But I can never, ever spell Haysi Fantayzee correctly without looking at their band name. It's just, I must have been a traumatic experience listening to this album or something. But it's really, really fun. It's goofy. It's definitely 1980s. This could not have been created in 1978 or 1993. This is very 1983, very weird, goofy. Now, this is the Cherry Red version here. It actually came out before that in America. It's the album with bonus tracks, but they retitled it as a best of. But it's essentially the same album, but each of these have slightly different bonus tracks. You definitely want to track them both down. But actually, this duo, they really didn't write the songs, I don't believe. I think they had a Svengali who was looking over the duo there. And it's like Bananarama taking acid and hanging out with, an early hip-hop producer. And it's really hard to describe, but it's so 80s and definitely want to check it out. Haysi Fantayzee came out in 1983.
He stands so high.
in 1979, 80, imagine going to gigs, seeing all these great new wave bands, and one of them just happens to be made up of entirely African Americans and a Latin member, and that band is the Busboys. What a group this was, or is actually, because Brian O'Neill, the main guy, still is recording. In fact, I think they should have an album coming out this year or next year. The first two albums, especially, are amazing. This is called Minimum Wage Rock and Roll, and the second album is called American Worker. It's incredible because they do address the issues, the racial issues and stuff, but they do it in a kind of humorous but still very serious way. And this, is it new wave? Is it punk? It's just everything. The core of it is rock and roll. And what they do around that is create their version of, whatever was happening during the LA scene at that time. Great songs like Did You See Me makes practically every mixtape that I've ever made in my life. But really, absolutely wonderful collection of songs. The Busboys' Minimum Wage Rock and Roll is definitely worth your time. Came out in 1980. And the last album I'm going to talk about on this episode of 10 Great Albums of the 80s is 1984's Howard Jones' Humans Lib. And this is a great collection of songs. It's his debut album. This is the album that has What Is Love, which was a hit. Pearl in the Shell is another song on here. But the song New Song, which was, I believe, his first single off the album, actually, I think, is really one of the greatest singles of the 80s, at least synth pop wise. It's just so catchy, so joyful. And each time I listen to it, I'm reminded of just what was going on at that time. It takes me right back to the era, as does everything else that I've talked about. This is an album that has some great, fantastic songs on it. I also really enjoy his second album, Dream Into Action. This right here, this is the album that introduced people to Howard Jones. He's still around, still making music, and it's definitely a worthwhile album to check out. This is an expanded edition here. Lots and lots and lots of bonus tracks, but there are versions out there on CDs, single disc version, and like I said, everything else you can get on vinyl. So Howard Jones' Humans Lib came out in 1984. that's it with this episode of 10 Great Albums of the 80s. I hope that this was a great blast from your past and maybe inspires you to go check out some of your favorite albums from the 80s. In fact, I would love for you to put your thoughts on some of these albums in the comments below, or maybe list some of your favorite albums. I've got a lot more that I can talk about in future episodes. But until then, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve SCHNEE, the CD Junkie.